Hello, Ridgefield families. My name is Corey Gillette. I'm the Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum and Instruction, and I'm here today with my colleagues to talk to you about the math placement process from grade 5 to grade 6. But before we get started, I want to give my colleagues a chance to introduce themselves.
Hello, I am Eric Undell, the 612 Math Science Supervisor.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome. I'm Linda Johnson, Director of Elementary Education.
Trisha Ranieri, Principal at East Ridge Middle School.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Keith Margolis, Principal at Branchville Elementary School.
Good morning. I'm Projecta Apple. I'm the Math Specialist at Branchville.
Hi, good morning. I'm Deirdre Rolfus, the Math Specialist at Ridgeberry Elementary School.
And here we go. So the purpose of our presentation today is to describe the goals and the process of the K-12 Math Placement Committee. That's been something that we've been working on for quite a long time, so we want to make sure that everyone understands how that process went. The next purpose is to build an understanding of the different courses that are offered in 6th grade. We also really want to make sure to explain to parents the different possible math pathways that students can take in middle school. We want to communicate the math placement criteria for this year, which is a little bit different. And then at the end of our presentation, we are going to take questions from the Google form. When we shared the announcement of this workshop, we also shared a Google form. So you can even go find it right now. It was attached to the announcement that had the link to the YouTube channel. That form is live, so we will see those questions during and at the end of our presentation, and we will look to that as a place to answer questions. So that's the purpose of our presentation today. So we created a K-12 math committee, and we had a shared goal. We wanted to create a process, a math placement process that places students into the class that best represents not only the math skills, but the disposition of the mathematician. And very importantly, we believe that a math placement process needs to be equitable for all students across our 6 elementary schools, responsive to the changing learning models that our students experience this year, and then representative of those required skills, learning behaviors, and dispositions that I mentioned earlier. So we got together as a K-12 math committee. So that means that we had representatives from all levels, both administrators and teacher leaders. And we spent months determining what that process would be like. So you're going to hear more about that today.
So good morning. I'm going to be speaking to you about the programming in 6th grade, and it's identical at both middle schools. So we have 2 levels of math in 6th grade. We have grade 6 math and we have grade 6 math accelerated. And I'll describe each of those to you shortly. And then after I share that description, I'll also share with you the levels at each grade level, 6th to 7th, 7th to 8th, and 8th into 9th, so that you have an understanding of the full pathway. In Math 6, the content focuses on our grade 6 priority standards. In addition to the knowledge of content, we look at the disposition of the learner. We really focus on their ability to persevere, their flexibility in thinking, as well as, are they able to make sense of problems? Are they fluent? Are they able to reason abstractly? Are they able to construct arguments? Are they able to use their different tools and identify the most effective tool to solve the problem? Those are just some of those dispositions of the learner that we look at, in addition to their ability to solve routine problems, solve novel problems, and critical thinking problems. And we'll talk a little bit more about what those are later in our presentation. But in this level of Math 6, our concepts are also scaffolded and retaught to ensure that we have content mastery. In grade 6 accelerated math, we have the grade 6 priority standards as well as identified grade 7 standards through the instruction for the course of the year. Again, we look at the disposition of the learner, and what we find for students at this level is that they are fluent and accurate, and they're able to solve these non-routine problems. They're able to take a problem they haven't seen before and to make sense of what the math is showing them and able to tap into their previous learning and be able to solve those problems. The pathways at the middle school, we're going to show you a graphic next, because placement is really important to us. And one of the things I want to emphasize at the middle school level is that we really want to make sure that your children are put into the right place and that we have a lot of movement in between from year to year. So it's important for you to understand that where your child starts in 6th might not be where they end up in 8th. There is opportunity for movement. So if you look, for example, at the Math 6, you'll see that straight line across your screen. They have a possibility of staying on grade level for grade 7 and grade 8, which allows them to progress into algebra in 9th grade. And then a student who does really well in the 6th grade year can be moved up to grade 7 Math Accelerated, where they would have an opportunity to take algebra in 8th grade and then geometry in 9th grade. Just as a FYI, about 20% of our children are in Math Accelerated in 6th grade. That is a typical breakdown. And so that's something that we look at through the course of as we're making these placement decisions. And the one thing I want to mention, and I forgot to mention this, once your child has their placement and they start at the middle school, we still continue to look to see that they're in the right place. And on the rare occasion where we may have put the child in not the right place, we will move them. So please know that that is something that's important to know. Each year there's opportunities for students to change levels as seen by the pathways, and you'll see the arrows. And we do have a jump of children who move from Math 6 to grade 7 Math Accelerated each year. So that's the pathways in a summary. Corey, back to you.
Thank you. Mr. Margolis, you're going to talk about the math placement process.
Sorry about that. Mute. So my colleagues and I, my elementary colleagues and I, are going to take a moment to talk about the 5th to 6th grade Math Accelerated criteria. I'm going to talk a little bit about the NWA, the MAP assessment, and we'll hear from my colleagues around the critical thinking assessment, and finally the journey to independence based on math practices. You may be familiar with the NWA MAP assessment. Students in Ridgefield Public Schools take the NWA beginning in kindergarten all the way up through 8th grade. This year we took the assessment twice, and typically we take it 2 or 3 times a year. The NWA we use for a number of purposes. To some extent, we use it as a screener. Does the information we gain from the NWA match the other information that we have about a child? If a student's having a bumpy time, or perhaps there's a student who's looks like they're ready for more, we can dig into those NWA scores and some of the related strands, if you will, to determine what's a good next step. We also look at the NWA at grade levels, at the building, and as a district to inform our curriculum instruction. An NWA score will be used as part of the criteria. I'm going to pass it along to Projecta Apo, who will talk about the critical thinking assessment.
Good morning. This critical thinking assessment was developed collaboratively between the middle school teachers and the elementary math specialists, really looking for non-routine and routine types of problems. So problems that students are comfortable with, that they've solved with their teachers, they've seen these types of problems, and then maybe some problems that have another layer of challenge or extension, where they take their learning from day-to-day work and see how they can apply it in more challenging situations. So the critical thinking assessment had a variety of those types of questions, all on grade 5 standards, really looking to see kind of the depth of understanding that a child has independently, and looking to see how those dispositions and their habits of mind kind of impact their learning and application of math concepts. I'll pass it to Deirdre.
Good morning. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the journey to independence and what do we mean by that? The journey to independence really addresses the teacher's voice in this whole process. And what we're looking at is when new concepts are presented to the students, how do they respond? So we have a set of criteria. It's 1 through 4. And basically you're looking at, for a 1 would be a student that requires repeated exposure and reteaching to grasp new concepts. Then we'd be looking at a student that generally grasps new concepts and benefits from repeated exposure and reteaching. Moving on, we have students that are easily and independently grasp new concepts. And finally, those students who grasp new concepts, they apply that learning to novel situations and they seek opportunities to challenge themselves independently. Really what we're looking there is at it for an independent thinker, not so much an independent worker. And finally, the other thing that we talk about is that the transition to middle school is not just about math placement, where you have students that are adjusting to an unfamiliar environment while meeting new teachers and classmates. And we need to, this whole experience needs to involve the balancing of the social emotional growth along with the academic growth.
So students need to meet 3 of the 3 criteria in order to be recommended for 6th grade accelerated math. We have spent a lot of time thinking about this, looking at this with a number of colleagues, as Corey mentioned earlier. But it's also important that we hear your perspective. And so this year we do formally have a waiver as part of this process. If you submit a waiver, you would be invited to a conversation, right? A conversation about your child. It's important that you hear from a school-based team about your child's performance. It's important that we hear your perspective. A waiver will be considered an option if a student meets a minimum score threshold. During this important transition year, as Deirdre just said, they're not just transitioning to a new math class, but they're making a transition to a new building. There's a lot of new, and we want to make sure that students are matched with what they need. Thank you for joining us to listening through the 5th to 6th grade math accelerated criteria. We do have some time here to transition to questions, and I believe we have Corey or some of our colleagues will help us manage those questions.
Okay. Thank you so much. And I think what you can tell families is how much thought has gone into this process. And I thought Deirdre and Projected did a really, really good job of explaining those components that are newer, that critical thinking task, and how that was created. That wasn't done in isolation at the 5th grade. That was done in collaboration with 6th grade teachers who know what 6th grade accelerated looks like, who knows what the expectations are, the dispositions of a math student in a course of that caliber. And then they created and really selected problems that would give us information if students are ready for that next step or not. So the other thing too that I just want to highlight is what Deirdre was saying about the teacher voice. We have heard from the community how important it is that teachers have a voice in this process, and the journey to independence is a way that we can help calibrate that teacher voice and really help teachers be more specific in their recommendations. So instead of just saying yes or no, it's really thinking about what is this student shown as a mathematician across an entire year. And that's something that we also know is very important to our communities and to us. We really care about a math student across many days and not just one day. So I hope, and I just wanted to highlight that because the thoughtfulness of the process should be evident through this conversation. Okay, so now is our opportunity to take questions. Our sheet is open, and I see that we do have some responses.
You do, Corey. Also, someone did just put in the YouTube chat as well.
Okay, so can you just put it on the document so I can see it?
Absolutely.
Thank you. All right, so that's a little technical support there. So it's almost like being in a room together. So one of the first questions, and I'm going to ask Mr. Margolis, was about what actually is the criteria? What are the numbers that are used for the criteria, the NWEA number and the number for the critical thinking task?
We're in the midst of analyzing all of that data like right now. So we're sleeves rolled up, making sure that we have all the criteria set, and it is the right, the right criteria. We're going to communicate that out once it's determined.
Okay, so I do have another question here about the communication process with parents. And I'm going to try to answer that, and then my colleagues will jump in if we need to elaborate a little bit more. I believe that in our letter to families describing this process, we said that parents could expect to hear about math placement on May 7th. So you can expect that you will have some communication from us around that time. And then Keith, I want to pass this other part of that question to you. The parent is wondering, how do we handle the disappointment? Is there support on hand for students who feel very disappointed in not getting into the math accelerated? How do the elementary schools handle that kind of emotion at this point?
Right. So, I think that is certainly partnering, right? A parent partnering with the teacher and if need be, other professionals to make sure that a student just feel comfortable that they're getting what they need, and getting what they need, right? That each student gets what they need is sort of what school is about, and understanding that what you might need at this moment in time is different from someone else. I know that classroom teachers are really quite sensitive to the information around math placement once it comes out. So I think if you're personally in a situation in which you're feeling like your child's quite upset about this, you reach out to your teacher. We all know, right, that disappointment, not making the team, whatever it is, not achieving some goal, is part of what it means to grow up. It's part of what it means to have, as we say at the elementary school, a growth mindset. And that resilience is just, we all know as adults, right, that's maybe among the most important lessons we've learned. That said, we also know that each child's different, and it's a different experience for each child. The level at which they absorb this kind of news, one way or another, is very different. So it's partnering with the classroom teacher and other professionals if necessary.
Thank you. Thank you.
And one of the things that we do too is we really talk about the idea of just not yet. Right? Students are developing skills. And this year of all years has been very bumpy. People have been in and out of quarantine. Learning has been disrupted. So I think it's very important to just say, you know what, we want you to have a solid foundation. And remember, 80% of our students are in Math 6. So that is our grade level math level. It is perfectly acceptable. It's a great place to be. And we want children to be in the sweet spot. If they're in math that is too hard for them, they are not going to learn. And they're not going to learn conceptually and deeply in the ways that we want them to be able to progress through the math levels through high school. We don't want to rush them. And that's why we do have the open pathways at the middle school for kids to grow and learn. And so when they're ready, we push them in, we put them into the next level. And I think that's an important reminder for our children and families.
And so in response to providing any additional summer support in mathematics, we encourage that. If any students are interested in doing any academic work over the summer, we always, as a school district, do encourage that. There isn't, we don't have anything in place. There aren't any placement assessments this summer for students to take to change their placement. But like Ms. Ranieri said, once you're in middle school, having that extra work, if you choose to do that with your child, will definitely support your entrance into sixth grade math. And if you are accelerating in the sixth grade math course, changes can be made at that time. And I think Deirdre said it a few times that we do want to try to find that sweet spot in the transition. And we want students to be where they are best suited. That may change in the fall. In the fall, they may really ramp up their math skills and look a little different as a math student than they do right now in almost May. So we do encourage any extra experiences with math and any academics. But that the placement process is how it stands. And I thought that Mr. Margolis explained the waiver process well. And we do invite any conversations about student achievement at any time. And we do invite you to come in and talk to the people who know your kids best. And that is your fifth grade math teacher and your administrator. All right, I'll just wait one more minute, but I don't see any other questions.
Corey, if I
Hold
may,
on, there's one question here, and I think I just want to clarify, Keith, elementary, and then Trish, thank you. You can finish with that. So the parents were wondering about, it seems like the question is a worry that kids might find out their placement in front of other kids. I assume that we make sure that we communicate to parents first, and then parents can communicate it to their child. It's not something that they're going to learn in school in front of other kids.
Yeah, traditionally it was emailed home to a parent,
Okay.
so that the parent is aware.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
it's
I
not
just,
something we advertise in the classroom, and it's, as I said, it's something classroom teachers are quite sensitive to. They know the date it's coming out.
okay, so I just want to reassure whoever asked that question that we are sensitive with that. Okay, Ms. Ranieri, what did you want to add?
I just realized I forgot in my describing the pathways, and John, I don't know if you want to just throw the pathways slide back up for a quick second, because when we go into sixth grade, there are 2 levels of math. And then
Slide 9, John.
Thank you. And then when we go into 7th grade, there's 2 levels of math. There's a Math 7 and a Math 7 Accelerated, just like 6th grade. But then we also offer an algebra class, which is a high school level class for those students from grade 6 Math Accelerated who have excelled even beyond and really are our strongest students. This is an extremely small percentage of students. It's less than 5% of students who qualify for this class, because it is a double acceleration, but I did want to mention it because I realized I didn't mention it at the time. And that allows students to then take geometry as 8th grade, and then they would be in Algebra 2 honors as freshmen. But then again, that is a very small percentage of students. The predominant pathways are, as you see on here, grade 6 math, you go into grade 7 math or grade 7 math accelerated. In grade 6 math accelerated, you could, depending on how you perform, go to grade 7 math, grade 7 math accelerated, or to algebra. So I just wanted to highlight that again. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Okay. So it looks like that's all the questions. I want to thank my colleagues for coming together today to share with families the math placement process from 5th to 6th grade. If you have any questions at all, please reach out to your building administrator and or reread any of the past materials that we have sent out, and be ready for May 7th, when we will communicate math placement to all elementary 5th graders, to their parents, to be clear. Thank you again. Thank you for joining us.